This is
Oh,
and for weddings and
Thank you
it's
so
like a
much.
French country.
oh,
Yeah,
yes.
stunning. Just stunning. It was outside. The wedding was outside. And the trellis was just, yeah. And everybody chipped in and helped get it done.
It's nice to have venues like that.
Yeah.
That are, I've been to a couple of outdoor weddings that were out, and just gorgeous.
Yeah, the countryside there is just beautiful.
Oh, yeah.
We had a good time. That's right, give them a few more minutes, okay?
We all go through this. It's unnerving.
Okay.
Yeah. Last week when we didn't have a Monday, though, I felt completely out of whack because I usually count on that Monday to help get me going.
Right.
So this morning I had to
Me
get up
too
and get
this
going.
morning. Me too. It's like, I went to bed last night. What time did I get home? Maybe about 3. And, I'm sitting there just looking through all the pictures and everything. And it's 10 o'clock. It's like, you need to go to bed. Because if you don't, you will not get up at 5:30 to
Oh,
get
gee, to
ready
get
to come here. So,
5:30, well, I got up at 6, so
yeah,
I get it.
yeah. I
I get up
have
much
to have
sooner.
time for coffee.
Yes. Okay.
Leisurely coffee.
Yeah, I have my newspaper. I'm one of the few people who still gets my Wall Street Journal comes every morning and I grab that with my coffee. I'm in heaven.
Yeah, I think with the pandemic, we just all got used to that, not running in the morning and sitting and having an extra cup of coffee or whatever you do in the morning. So,
I've always been a morning paper reader. I would go into the office early so I could have my paper and read it before I
Yeah.
started my day.
yeah.
Now I just do
sort
it
of look at my
later.
phone and read my phone now.
Yeah.
Yeah, because everything's on the phone, so.
I don't know. I still like my paper.
Bonnie was in one of our fraud seed classes that we
Mhm.
had out in Plain City.
Bonnie's been very diligent about getting to the class.
I don't have any clients, but I'm very educated.
What do? You've already got a closing, you
I
got
have
another
closing.
client you're working with.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We're trying to get them there.
We'll go ahead and get started.
I would go
And
ahead.
then as, if people come in, we'll have them sign in and
Yeah.
do this. I'm grateful that you 3 of you are here.
We're happy you're here.
And, I want you to know that no question is a stupid question. You just ask because we've covered all sorts of stupid things, over the years. And I am Debbie King with Land Sell Title. I've been a licensed title agent for a very long time. So we have Sarah Thorpe, who is our attorney, also here to address any questions that you might have, legalities. And as we go over some of this stuff, we're going to go over the class first, and then we have a settlement statement in the packet that I gave you as well, and we'll go over that. If actually Sarah pulled it because it had rents that were on it, a little different looking settlement statement that had some extra things on it. So I'll let you go over that. Is that all right?
Fine.
And it was one of her clients' settlement statements. And we're gonna give you the website, Land Sell Title's website, and we can pull that up together if you'd like, and it'll show you where the settlement state or the seller net sheet and things like that on there are. It's helpful. If you're you guys sort of work 24/7, at least you will. 24/7, and you have those instruments at your hand, at your fingertips to pull that open. So some of the paperwork up front, I want you to grab it so that you have it on your desk, and it's really talked a little bit about land sell title and what we do. It's the little piece of paper up there about our title services or net to seller figures, remote and out of town closing. So we close anywhere, anytime. and that's nationally, we do. We have an office we have 2 offices in Florida as well. But we have clothing agents that we have affiliations with all over the country. So if you have somebody that's selling and moving across country or already have moved across country, we can make sure that they get their closing done without having to come back, to get that done. So we do escrow, deed preparation, reporting, staff attorney, property profiles, flyers, email blast, social media. Mindy Clark is our marketing person who's in graphic designer. So she helps you farm, if you will, subdivisions and target markets. Helps you do that. So she's really good at what she does. And some of that is in the property profiles, the flyers, email blast, social media. She'll help you with that, postcards, door knocking campaigns, and then event marketing. So we'll help you with that. So again, I'm Debbie King. That's my contact information is at the bottom of that. One of the other flyers that I have is our closing locations all over Central Ohio. Our main processing office is in Gahanna. But we have other closing locations around and in Delaware as well. And again, we close anywhere. So I have closed at a hospital, at Panera's, at Bob Evans, in somebody's kitchen, in a car, wherever you need it. I've gone to a jail. What? I was much younger. No. But you gotta go where you gotta go to get signatures. So we also have a great staff of contract closers that are available to do after hour closings as well. I did leave a flyer also that has samples of marketing that Mindy does. So if you want to set up an appointment with her, and we can make that happen, and you can sit down and talk about a plan. We'll do that. So are you guys doing real estate part-time, full-time?
Full-time.
Full-time. I like to do that. We talked at the other meeting. So I'm going to go ahead and get started with the class. Again, like I said, this is really about from the time the property goes into contract to closing. It also talks a little bit about when you go for your listing appointment and how those papers are signed. So have we had a listing appointment at all? Okay. So when you go into a listing appointment, Carol interject as well on all of this. And I would ask that before you go on a listing appointment, you get on the auditor's website. Pull up the address and see how it's entitled. Sarah and I talked a little bit about this, and she brought up a good thought in that you got to see if they're in title as a single person, just in their name. We'll talk about dower and marital status here in a few minutes, or if it's in both their names, or if it's in a trust, or if it is in an LLC. So the way that it's in title is how that contract has to be signed. And listing agreement has to be signed. Do you want to interject anything?
Well, I was just gonna say that if you have a question about that, you can always call me and I can look at the trust documents or look at the operating agreement and tell you how they need to sign the contract. Because you just want to make sure they're signing in their capacity as a member or a trustee and not as an individual.
We just had this conversation in training. And I told them, I said, you're going out on a listing appointment and maybe the parents are infirm or they've been moved to a home. Now the kids want to sell the house. And maybe they don't have any right to sell the house. You need to know who you're dealing with. We just talked about that.
We'll talk a little bit about guardianship that's in
Yeah.
POA
Yeah,
here
exactly.
in just a little bit regarding that. I know, both my parents are gone, but my mom had POA. She was the last survivor of the home, owning the home. But then she had Alzheimer's, so then we had to get a guardianship. So there was a lot involved to that, and we'll talk a little bit more about that as getting authority to sell the house if the signer is a guardian of the owner of the property. So we'll talk about that. So make sure that you check the auditor's website. And I always ask how many, but check the ID of the people you're going to their house to get the listing agreement. Just make it part of your standard procedure, excuse me, because usually how they're going to sign was with their legal name. And you want to make sure that those people indeed are the people that are selling the house. And the lenders do it. They have to collect the ID to make sure they are actually the people that own the property or that they are going to be the buyer of that property. And checking the ID is always a positive thing to do. It's a little layer of protection.
Since you can't make a copy or anything, should you keep their license number or anything like that, or just check it to make sure
Yeah.
the names match?
Look at the picture, look at the
Okay.
names, and make sure they are who they say. they
Yeah.
are. That's all.
You really just need to see how they're on auditor site for how they'll sign the contract, so you don't need to keep a copy of it, just as long as you verify.
And always ask marital status as you go to your listing appointment. Ohio's a dower state, which really means, and you can get into more of the legalities of it, but if you are married to someone, you cannot buy or sell a piece of property without the knowledge of your spouse. There's some stories that I'm gonna share with you about people that come to the closing table and they're not married to each other anymore. And the license, I had one situation where I had some fraud being played at the closing table, and the woman that was brought as the wife wasn't really the wife because they didn't think I was not going to look at the picture. And so they had some IDs made up. So it just was a bad situation all the way around on that. So, just ask them if they're married to each other. I will at the closing table. If you don't, I am going to ask that in your processor. So once that contract's sent into the office, your processors are going to ask, are your clients, what's the marital status of your client? So we know, we need to know that. That's very important.
So that's the case, even if the property is owned by only one of them? That still applies, okay.
Yes, so the spouse is always gonna sign the deed if you're selling, or the mortgage if you're buying. So if you are purchasing cash, you won't have to have a spouse sign.
Right.
Or if you're selling in an entity like an LLC or a trust or a corporation, it's gonna be the operating agreement or the bylaws that will dictate who signs. So then you won't have doubt. But those are pretty much the only situations, or if it's in an estate or.
There's a lot of layers,
Mhm.
but this is just sort of a surface to get you started and to be aware. Also, and I put here, contracts need to be signed, how the property is entitled, personally, LLC member or trustee. Is how those documents will be signed once the auditor site is checked and you see how that property is entitled. One thing that happens, and I see a lot of contracts come over, and I know Sarah does too. You'll get people signing their simple names, and I'm Debbie King. You want to know how many Debbie Kings are in Franklin County? A lot. And so that is the wrong way to sign legal documents, and a contract listing agreement is a legal document. So Deborah L. King, so it's a little clearer as to who I am. And the same thing with like Jimmy Johnson. There's how many Jim or James Johnsons are there out there? And this particular one, it's James E. Johnson III. So if that is how he's entitled and how his driver's license reads, that's how he should be signing. And then Peggy Smith, her name is really Margaret M. Smith, and so it makes a world of difference, and particularly with the Attorney General's office. If anything, we will always get in a title search judgments and liens coming back against a name, not necessarily the person, that need to be verified. So when that search comes back and just say Debbie King or Deborah L. King, because it's still a very common name. That'll come back with Deborah spelled Deborah. It may come back with Debora. It may come back as my name is spelled with judgments and liens against that name, but it's not me. So the Attorney General has to get involved, and we have processors that have an authorization form that will need. You will find that out when the search comes back. As agents, you will find that out. You'll need to contact your sellers and let them know we need authorization to get verification at the Attorney General's office that that's not them. It isn't something, and I'll be perfectly honest, we do have a lot of agents that escalate this because they don't know how to de-escalate it. I had one lady, a seller, that accused me of accusing her husband having an affair because his name came up as a common name with some other woman's name with it. And
Oh, wow.
I was on the phone with her for 2 hours one night. She'd hang up on me and she'd call me back and she'd hang up. It's like, I'm not, so we have to check it out. We just have to check it out. We need to clear it. We're issuing title insurance. We have to clear it so that that title insurance going to the buyer is free and clear of any encumbrances. So just know if you're getting a listing or even working with a buyer with a very common last name, the lender may need to do some checking as well. They'll get our title commitment. So they'll see things that may need to be verified. So any questions about that? Always check marital status of your clients and let the title company know. Let the title company know of impending divorces. That happens a lot that, we do separate closings if the divorce isn't filed and final. We will do it that way. We have had divorces clear and be filed like moments before closing. And because we have to check, we just have to check. Again,
I don't know if we said, but dower only applies when they're married. So if they're divorced and that's the final decree has been filed, they don't have to have the spouse sign unless they're both entitled.
correct.
You guys aren't really clear on this, stop and ask the question. It can be very confusing. A dower especially, and who has to sign and who doesn't have to sign and all that.
If they're married and it's not in a trust, the property, and it's not in an LLC, the spouse will always need to sign something. And whether it's on the buy side mortgage or the sell side deed, unless it's a cash transaction
For the buyer.
for the buyer.
There's a
Yeah,
lot.
the deed will always be, the seller will always sign the deed. So,
Sorry to interrupt you. Talk about marriage after the purchase. In other words, say the man or woman bought property as a single person and now they're married.
Right. I think we get that a lot because they're like, I bought this on my own. I'm
Right.
entitled by myself. And it's like, yes, but once you got married, that person has a dower interest in your
Yeah.
property immediately. And they have to release it.
Thank you.
yeah, I had a closing where it's happened several different times, and the now spouse didn't come to closing, and we had to go to that person and get them to sign. They came into the closing room, they got called and were able to come in and sign, but yeah,
So what
once you're
happens if they
married,
won't? What happens if they refuse to sign?
And they can't close.
we put our pen down.
That's the problem.
And the person who owns the house can't, after they're married, transfer it to an LLC because
They have to sign the deed to
They still
transfer
have to
it.
do that.
That's great.
Mhm.
Yeah.
So if you were going to get married, you should transfer it before you
Yeah,
get married.
pretty much if the spouse won't sign, then you have to get the court involved. So.
Sticky wicket. It's not good.
And I'm just gonna say, never take marital status for granted. Then we just talked about a lot of what we just said, but I had a closing, at 4 o'clock on a Friday afternoon. It was a very seasoned agent. The sellers had, representing them, a lovely gal. And I, at the closing table, as I closed most of my own deals, and so I asked the seller as they signed the deed, and you are married to each other. They look at me. They're not even married, and they're divorced, and recently divorced. I mean, real recently. Wasn't caught in a title search or anything to find a divorce decree. He went by Pete and then a very short version of his last name legally here, but the divorce decree was in his very long Greek name. And it wasn't found. And so we had to stop closing. And we were able, luckily, electronically, to pull up the divorce decree in his long legal Greek name. And they still live together. They still work. I look at hands, rings. I look at everything at the closing table. And so I was shocked when they said they brought their 2 little girls with them. They had wedding rings on. They still live together. I don't want to know any of the details, but it sort of shocked me that the evidence was that they weren't married. I mean, it shocked the agent that they weren't legally married. The good thing is the divorce decree didn't have anything about the real estate in it. And that's all I need to know. So just ask if you're married in the beginning, and then we're clear about that. So also, if there's a filed divorce, the title company will need to review that filed divorce decree, so we know how to disperse funds. That we see funds being split equally, we see funds not being split equally. I had a situation, call it my Jerry Springer closing, when we issued the checks, and one of them got more money than the other, and the one that didn't get as much money ripped this check up and threw it up in the air, and I had to take them out of the room. So we have that. Those things happen rarely, but they do happen. So
I just want to say too, that we spend so much time on dower because it is literally the biggest issue we have. I feel like it's the biggest problem, and even lenders still don't understand, because sometimes they're out of the state where they may not have dower, and they're like, they don't need to sign, and it's just always an issue.
and when you're in Ohio, you got to play by Ohio laws, and that's hard to get across. And I know you'll remember this one too, was during the pandemic, at a closing with a young man, agent was lovely. He's buying a house, all excited, and I get to the mortgage and it says unmarried man, and I will say, is that correct? No, I have a wife. Remember? She was in Venezuela and she came across illegally. So she did not have a passport. She did not. And the one that she actually could produce was it expired year. It was old. We couldn't move forward.
And that is the other thing, is we recognize marriages internationally. So if people are married outside of the United States, that spouse still needs to release down.
Yeah. Another closing, another story. I was at a closing table and I had 3 gentlemen from India that were buying, they were selling a property, and they wanted their money in cash, so we couldn't do that. They were not happy about that. And then they each had a wife that didn't bring clothing, because in India, they don't, we have a lot of cultures here. They don't, the wives have no part in this. And it's like, well, they're in Ohio, they do. And they all worked, 3 of them worked at Taco Bell's in Grove City. So we went and got signatures of all of them. So it applies. It just applies. And we'll talk about good funds, but, I'm gonna say 30 years ago, probably 25 years ago, we still took some cash at closing, if it was small amount. We'd slap those dollars and those coins on a printer and scan it.
We
And
still take cash. Under like $100.
in form of a personal check, though.
No, we can still take cash.
Really?
Yeah.
I have not had any cash
Yeah.
at the table. So do you still
Who has
scan it?
cash Anyway.
And put it in an envelope.
Yeah. Well, that's what we.
It
used to do.
doesn't happen, but
I was gonna say, I haven't seen it for
Yeah.
such a long time.
yeah.
So, we used to do things that way. We'll talk about the good funds and when we go through the paperwork.
I have a question about the Venezuelan wife who didn't have ID, so they couldn't, there's no way to solve that, is there?
Our underwriter would not do it.
Okay,
All right, we tried,
so basically
tried
he could
every-
not buy the house. at
Right.
all.
not with us.
Okay.
Yeah, not with us. They did not. So I'm gonna tell you, I know Sarah's been doing this a long time as well. I've been doing this a long time. We have really great underwriters of title insurance. And we don't want anything to come back on you guys. And so, we may have a judgment call, but we will always run it. If it's really iffy, we'll run it through our underwriters to make sure, because we do not want anything to come back on a claim to us, but really for you guys to come back with any problems. So you have to be careful.
So his only solution there would have been to do a private transaction with the seller potentially.
I'm not going to talk about the resolution that they came up with another title company.
Oh, okay.
Because I'm just saying,
Yeah, okay.
I'm not gonna lose my license over it. I know she's not gonna lose hers over it either, so
I hear
no.
what you're saying.
no.
Regardless, she would have had to sign was it the mortgage or the buyer?
Yes, it was a
So
mortgage. Yeah, it was a
even a
mortgage.
private transaction, unless they paid cash. If they
Uh,
paid
and I don't
cash,
know.
she could have done.
Yeah. But it was just a mortgage company. So also I want to let you know, if there is a separation agreement or a pending divorce not filed yet, the spouse will still need to sign certain documents because they're still married. Somebody will say, well, I'm getting divorced or I have a separation agreement. No, I need to see the separation agreement. So how we're going to disperse it might be different, but they still need to sign. So, Florida, I have a story. Maybe if one of you will make my story list sometime.
We hope not.
I know. I had an agent call me. She had the wife here, the husband to soon to be ex-husband moved to Florida. Well, and they're divorced in Florida now, yeah. And she wanted to know, well, since they don't live in the same state, he doesn't need to really have. Yeah, he does. They're still legally married in Ohio, and Florida is a dower state. And so he needs to sign. So if you ever in doubt, ask. Just please, just ask. So some of the things that are important on the second page to note is what's your second page look like? Sometimes mine is not. Is it
From the contract to close the date.
the only time the spouse is not required to sign?
Mhm.
Okay, there was an extra page. It's like, I don't think I'm quite there yet. And we talked about that. The only time that the spouse is not required to sign is when there is an LLC, the business entity, and or a trust. And then we will need corporate resolutions, LLC agreements. And I have to say, I have one, and she asks me this every time when there's an LLC. She goes, well, I can just get online and pull a copy of the corporate certificate. No. Yeah, that's great. But we need the corporate resolution. We need to actually review those documents to see who has authority to sign. So those need to be provided. We try to keep a copy if it's a repeat client in, but those things change. They may change them and we may not know. So that's we always try to ask for a most recent copy of that. And then, again, the trust agreement, we need to review that and find out who is a trustee or co-trustee that will need to sign documents. Anything else you want to add to that? Power of attorney, we will always need to review it, or we can also prepare a limited power of attorney that's specific to the real estate. So Sarah does a lot of that. Lender needs to approve it if the buyer has one. Sellers, they pretty much can get one if they need it. I had a closing where I had one gal that had power of attorney for 5 of her family members to come. And some of those family members were married. And so she not only had the, sibling, but the spouse that needed. So it was a lot for that one gal to do, but she did a really fine job. But the POA needs to be really specific. There's no expiration date on the POA unless it's stipulated in the power of attorney or with death. And they're also, they can get them done out of the country. They need to go to a US embassy to have power of attorneys prepared there if they're out of the country. I had a situation, anything you want to add to that?
Oh, no, but I mean, we do it wrong now, so it doesn't have to be at the US Embassy. It could be through the remote online. notary.
Remote online notary. Platform.
That's how we get a lot of those spouses to release dower is just through POA. or something
Yeah.
like that.
I have a question on the POA. Can you just download a generic one and get everybody to sign it? And
I
that's
mean-
acceptable.
A lot of people do, but I have to review it.
Okay.
And sometimes when you're just downloading it online, it will not be durable. Like meaning if someone were to become incompetent, it wouldn't apply or it goes right away that it only applies if they're incompetent. And then these people can't sign because the person's still competent. So you just have to make sure that it's all good for the transaction. And I prepare the property specific POAs. So it limits it to that because some people don't want, their sister having POA over all their financials and everything for just one transaction.
So that'd be something we'd submit early on.
Yeah.
To get you to review it. to make sure it's
Right.
Also, a transaction that I had a couple years ago, the seller, the mom was in a nursing home, and the daughter had power of attorney. And the night before closing, unfortunately, the mother passed away. So the power of attorney was no longer valid. I mean, I found out actually in the process of driving to the condo to sign her that had happened and the daughter was already there and the buyer was there and we were going to sign documents and I couldn't. We had to reschedule because we had to file death certificates and affidavit of death and.
Luckily, there was a transfer on death designation affidavit that we could do that. Otherwise, it would have to go through probate because she couldn't be the POA.
Yeah, but that happens, things happen, and that's one of them that it no longer existed. She didn't understand why she still couldn't use that POA. That just dissolves, no longer valid. Court-appointed guardianships are all they're all approved by the courts. So I know when I had guardianship of my mom, I had to go through the court system in order to get that guardianship. And then also if the property is being sold, that guardian has to get it approved with the court. So that can take a little minute to do that. Just know that. All real estate transactions or anything regarding a guardianship has to be approved through the court system. If a spouse is deceased, check to see if the deed is recorded as a survivorship, has survivorship language on it. That's a lifesaver for so many things as far as real estate transaction is concerned, because that portion of that passes away automatically goes to the survivor, without going through probate court.
Right.
Wouldn't that be standard language?
It's not always because, I mean, for husband and wife, it should be, but if it's like siblings in title or, I mean, partners, it's not always by default survivorship. It's tenants in common, which means that their interests would go through probate. But there are ways, even if the survivorship language isn't in there, if it's between husband and wife, that we can file an affidavit. It's called an affidavit of inheritance. And there's certain things that would apply that it wouldn't have to go through probate. So that's again, something that I could just look at the deed and we could discuss it.
So we will also need a certified copy of the death certificate in order to get that process started. If the property is in an estate, the title company will have to review the paperwork to see who has authority to sign, the executor. So that's what we would be looking for there. Most likely, the title will need contact information of the attorney who's handling the estate to work through that. One story that I had in the last couple of years, and I've already talked about the one where the POA, the seller passed away and the daughter had POA. So I had one where the father owned a property in one county, but lived in another county. So we had to search both counties to find out what was going on with the deceased owner of the property. And so that took some time to be able to do that. Title search also searches taxes and then Medicaid. And we did find that there was some Medicaid challenges on this one that we had to work through and get released. So just because the property is in one county, just keep in mind the owner was in another county and died in another county. So we had to do both of those searches and that. It just took longer.
Does Medicaid have a lien or something like that?
In this case, they did.
Yeah,
Okay.
they can. It's
Yeah.
pretty
They're
complex
hard.
that it
Yeah.
can, but.
Yeah.
And it took a long time. I mean, it took a couple extra months to work through some of those challenges that we have with Medicaid on this one. Title searches, how the property is entitled, we'll look for mortgages of record, taxes paid or owed, assessments for lighting or sewer, probate, divorce, easement, restrictions. And then I wrote in here again, because I can't say this enough, Attorney General, if you have a very simple name, a very popular name, there will be judgments that come against that name, and it's not most likely your person. I have had where they are, and they just are, oh, forgot about that one. So, but we have to, as a insurance company, check those all out. So, just be calming to your people and say this is normal practice with very common last names, and we're not accusing your husband of having an affair with the lady, but nobody knows. So we're gonna, any questions about that so far? No, we're good to move forward. The third page then, I believe it talks about addendums. Is that what's on your page? That's making sure, because I have a few of these got out of order for me. We've had an interesting couple of years with the way the market has been with writing escalation clauses and what was met initially and what was written down in piece of paper. And there's just a couple of things that contracts and addendums, all agreements are to be written in the contract or addendum. Please have addendum reviewed by your broker. You can ask me. But you need to make sure that your broker is aware of what you're writing, or call Sarah.
I will guarantee you, and they know it, that in this brokerage, all clauses are sanctioned and written by the brokers and or our attorneys.
Mhm.
They are the only clauses they're allowed to use, and if the clauses are not already there, if in the circumstance, they are to talk to the broker and get that clause referred back to the part of the contract to which it applies and is written in language that is sanctioned by the brokerage. So it's not, that you're not gonna find all the loosey-goosey language in our offers to purchase. And you would
But you
find-
may be on the buy side. You
Well, that's
may
true.
receive those addendums from, if you're representing a buyer, that the listing agent on, if I'm another brokerage, is writing in addendums and clauses and contracts that aren't regulated. So
Absolutely
nicely,
correct.
yeah.
And that
So-
happens a lot now. We're finding that it's so out of whack, so creative writing
Create.
classes,
Mhm.
which I call it when I.
Or vague.
Or
Very
vague, or
vague.
UPL, you're
Right.
dangerously close to the unlicensed.
Well,
party.
that's what I was gonna say, it was a
Exactly.
bigger concern when
Yeah.
you're doing that.
Yeah.
So.
So we need to be on the lookout on the buyer's side for contracts that are coming to us. Or being, not the buy side, but the seller side too, that are coming in, to see if they pass muster.
When I went back to my seller's agent and said, my broker does not agree with the way you structured this, even though she said her broker said it was okay. And I asked her to restate the
Yeah.
document, which she did do.
That's good.
Or you ask title to,
Yeah.
there's so much bigger than just providing title services. We
Yeah.
appreciate that.
Yeah, I mean, I may know answers, but legally I can't
Yeah.
talk about them, and I'll call her and it's like, okay, then I'm covered.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, I have some examples that I've run into, over, the last few years, and one was an agent that was local. But he wrote a contract on a property in southern Ohio. They do things a little differently down there. And, they had a verbal agreement on the notes to the title company, because nothing was in writing until we got to the closing table. Verbal agreement that the buyer was gonna pay a 0.5% of the commission and to bring the check to closing. I do not ever want to be seeing checks being exchanged at the closing table when I'm at it. So if you're agreeing to do something with the buyer and or seller, you do it outside
Mhm.
closing, because I'll stop closing. I don't want to know about it. Well, then the agent here was a new agent. It was a new agent. He had the buyer of that property in southern Ohio. Well, then the lender found out about this. And they had to actually put something in writing about that at the closing table and have it signed. Or that closing was gonna blow up. But yeah, it's like, well, we verbally agreed to it. No, that won't work. So just be aware of that. I have another one regarding extra deposit monies. We had a lot of that in the last couple years where, in this case, we had earnest money, but the closing kept getting delayed. And the seller says, you're delaying this closing. I'm not compensated for this closing being delayed. So they did the addendum. And there was supposed to be a non-refundable deposit of, I'm gonna use $1,000. I don't know, can't remember how much it was. And whether the deal closed or not. This still up, just, and the addendum stated the buyer may receive their deposit back. So the seller would have to give the deposit back to the buyer at closing if it closed by a certain date. So the word may was in there. It wasn't non-refundable. It didn't say non-refundable, it just may. So that was vague. The lender saw that and the lender gave the buyer back the $1,000, whatever the amount was. Well, seller and the soliciting agent was angry because we should have known what they. No, you wrote it this way. So we all interpret things differently. So just be really clear with your people, your clients, that you know what you want, put it in an addendum, send it to your broker, call Sarah, she'll make sure that that addendum is written the way that you mean it to be written. So, and in this case, he didn't approve, get it approved by the broker or Sarah. And it was very upsetting at the closing table. Was very upset.
I just want to add to with earnest money, if we're holding it, we need a mutual release to release it. If you're using the Columbus Board contract, we're not gonna just release it back to the buyer with a notice of termination. Because it's not up to us to determine who, if someone breached the contract, or we just don't want any of that liability on us, so we need a mutual release.
As do we.
And we're gonna talk about a termination, because Sarah and I had this conversation not long ago. I had a new agent. That they had a contract. Both these agents were really excited that they were gonna be closing this deal. We had the order in and they got us all our information that we needed. Everything's moving forward. And we get a termination of contract based on yada yada. I mean, there was list signed by the buyer. Well, when it's terminated and it's signed, it's terminated. And I'm projecting, so I don't know if this is the case, but don't ever use that as a negotiating tool to terminate a contract with a list of everything that reason why they're terminating it. Then the next day, then we get an addendum to the terminated contract saying this addendum, we don't want to terminate the contract, we're moving forward with it. And I had to call both agents and say, we need a new contract. Well, we need to do this as quickly as possible. It's like you wrote a termination. You have signed termination. You have to rewrite this contract. So they did, and we got it closed, but just know that termination of contract is not to be used as a negotiating tool. And once it's signed and we have it, it's over. And then you have to write a new contract and send it back over to keep that deal going. So the lender didn't even know it was terminated. So they kept sending us things, to move forward with closing. So anyhow, that just happened. Another example, seller at the closing table after signing, this just happened, asked the title company to hold monies for a 1031 exchange. So people can sell properties. They have to qualify the properties for a 1031 exchange where the title company holds the money until they go buy another property. And it's mainly done for investing and things like that. So I'm doing the closing and we're all done, we're all signed. And then the seller wants me to hold this money for a 1031 exchange. And we just can't do that. We didn't have the buyer's signature yet, so the deal wasn't actually closed, but it didn't move forward. The property was a primary residence, so it didn't really qualify for the 1031 exchange. But 1031 exchanges always have to be prepared prior to closing. So just when somebody asks you that, we have contacts of people that will work with us to prepare the 1031 exchanges, and they need specific information. And they got to qualify the property for it.
Well, I just want to add, that's for purposes of saving on capital gains. You don't have to pay them, they just go into the other property. So if you're doing investing, you might want to ask your client if they're interested in doing that. And we do provide that service.
Are you guys clear on a 1031 exchange, or is it gobbledygook to you? Because I don't think they're fully aware of what a 1031, not at this stage, a 1031, they're probably not paying mine. But, and I know you will eventually with investments, but I want to make sure that when we throw out a term, if it's not fully clear, that we'll clarify it at the time.
it's really if you work with investors, yeah.
Mhm.
They
Uh,
move their money, there it's. Well, I don't wanna.
Yeah, they have a certain amount of time to flip that property, and not pay capital gains on the proceeds, so.
It's just instead of getting the proceeds as the seller, it goes to a qualified intermediary and they hold those funds. And then the seller chooses a different property to purchase and those funds then go into purchasing that investment property instead of them paying capital gains on it.
So the title company can be the qualified intermediary.
Yes,
The only
we,
time I've ever done them, I've done them through banks that had
Yes.
a department.
we could do that. Mhm.
Thank you,
Mhm.
appreciate that.
I think the next page, and what do you got next? I have one that's out of, is that the important notes up at the top, that, and somehow that got moved to front of mine, when I was putting them together. Information needed, if you're representing the buyer, I'm gonna put marital status right up there at the beginning. You need to know if your buyer is married, and if they are, who that person is, and they are married to each other. I've had so much fraud over the years, I won't say so much, once or twice, trying to pull off somebody else as a spouse, and it wasn't a good thing. And I was at Northwest Title, Scott Stevenson was involved in that one, and we got subpoenaed in the court to verify what had happened on that one, so I don't ever want to do that again. I just really don't want to do that one again. Phone number and email addresses, the title company will need those. So have that ready as you turn in an order. Make sure that you have your information together. And if you need an information sheet, I can get you that information sheet that you can fill out as you get your listing or working with the buyer for their contact information. You probably have it in your Keller Williams packet as well. A valid driver's license, passport, and visa. Visa is not a credit card. I actually, a travel visa, so a student visa. I had somebody give me a visa. So, and they have to have photos, on the ID as well. So lender's name, contact information, and if you have a copy of the pre-approval letter, it's helpful because it gives us the contact information of the lender at the bottom when you send an order over. Or when you're working with the title company on the buy side, having that information. How does the buyer want to take title? We usually can find that out from the lender, but it's a conversation you may want to have with your client. How they want to take title to the property. We'll get a loan application over that usually has how they're going to take title to the property. I've also had it change at the closing table. That they don't want to be in as a single person, that they actually want to take it as the LLC and turn it into an all-day closing. We order pizza. So that means the lender has to sort of run it back through again. So it worked out all right. Is the buyer going to be out of town? Lender has to approve, lender's approval is needed on all closings that are not being done in the title office. So if they're going to be closing somewhere else, they just need to get approval to do that. Seller information, again, marital status, if you're representing a seller, phone number, email address, same thing, driver's license, passport. Payoff information and mortgage for mortgage and equity lines. We have some equity lines going on now. So down the road, we're going to need not only information about the first mortgage, but for their equity line or second mortgage, same thing. As far as down at the courthouse and a lien on the property. So we'll need that information, and just knowing this and making your buyer or seller aware of the things that we'll be asking for. We need written authorization to obtain a payoff. So our escrow team has that information and we'll send it in an encrypted email to your clients to fill out with their social security number, account number, bank and all that information and have it sent back to us. So, and the authorization is there. And for the seller, HOA, condo association, contact information. I'm gonna tell you, it's not only dower is one of our biggest things, but condo and homeowner associations are one of the biggest claims against title insurance. And it's hard to find them sometimes. Making sure when you're talking with your seller and selling the property, getting that information from them in the beginning is just really helpful for us. We keep a lot of information on hand, but we don't have all of them on hand. If it's not recorded down in the courthouse, then we don't have a lot of information about that kind of thing. We need to verify with the condo association or HOA to make sure payments have been made. There's no delinquencies, things of that nature. So it does cost. That's on the settlement statement. So we'll talk a little bit about that when we order condo docs and HOA docs and things. If the seller is going to be out of town, same with the buyer, being out of town, we need to know. The earlier we know that, the better. The seller doesn't need approval for anything, but we need to know where to send the documents, need to know where to send a notary, need to know if I need to be available on the phone, while they're getting those signatures. I do that as well. It's really important. A lot of times we'll go, oh, by the way, I forgot to tell you. And so we're doing a rush, it's just things to think about.
As, if I could offer, just as a president of a small HOA, it's been consistent that title companies are not getting the documents to give to the buyers. I've had buyers reach out to me after the fact. The title company always does check to see if they're paid, but they never say, could you get us a copy?
We probably won't ask that unless we're asked to ask.
Yeah.
Okay. So that doesn't normally come up when you do your property record searches, since they're always of record.
They're not always of record,
Okay.
but, yeah, I mean, if the buyer asks for a copy, we can provide it. It's usually like,
Ours is very simple.
That's good.
But still, yeah.
Yeah, that's good. In a lot of the HOAs, I mean, real property management, and we've got some big
Oh, yeah.
corporations that are very strict and very expensive to get things from.
Yeah.
So, and those are always fees that get passed on. So,
Right.
well, a lot of them will pay up front, but there are charged in the settlement statement. Information needed from the Realtor Commission is really important. So make sure we get that. Additional brokerage commission, if there is any, home warranty and any other invoices to be collected at closing. A lot of times that's it's a last minute thing that agents are sending over. If you know that that's the case, then maybe get that over. Home warranty usually will send it directly over to the title company, but it doesn't hurt to include that in some notes, what the home warranty company's name is and how much that policy is going to be. Review the settlement statement for corrections, commission, purchase price, etc. I know sometimes it's hard to get settlement statements over to the agents in a timely manner. It depends on how quickly. On a listing side, we should get it over right away. That we'll get a payoff order. We'll get it over if you're listing a property for the seller, but the buyer, sometimes we're just at the mercy of the lender. And whenever they get the closing instructions over to us, and we thought a couple years ago when all this changed that we needed to have, the CD to them 3 days prior to closing and all of that and reviewed and clear. It was supposed to get much easier. It hasn't. And I think those laws have also been interpreted differently by every lender in every state. So whenever we get those closing instructions, we prepare them and get them out to you. We do try really, 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 really hard to get you your title commitment 15 days prior to closing per the contract. Sometimes we're not getting the contract until 10 days before closing. So obviously that's not gonna happen. And you do an addendum to the contract waiving that. So, did I miss anything there? Okay.
Can I just add something?
Yeah.
So, cause I get asked this all the time. We go into our whole process of what we do, but our main job is to issue title insurance, which what that is it's the only insurance that's covering the past. So we are giving the buyer marketable title saying that there's no third party interest that's gonna come along and say, I have an interest in this property. So that's why we do all of what we do. So I just wanted to
It is what we do.
And when she talks about a commitment, that's our commitment to insure property. And that lays out everything that we're gonna do to make sure we can insure it.
And the title commitment will have the results of the title search on it. So that's where you'll see, if you have a common name, you'll see some things on there that were found in that common name that we're gonna have to clear. And that's what we do through the Attorney General's office. So just know that if there's a mortgage of record, that will be on there. We'll need to clear that mortgage off with the settlement statement when closing. There's tax liens. We need to clear those, and those will be on the settlement statement, if there are any, and things of that nature. So,
And when we talk about dower, the issue with that, if they don't sign, is then this person still has a 1/3 interest in the property. So that's why we want them to sign, because otherwise they can still come and say, well, I have an interest in this property.
Sarah, can you do, I'll call it third party work, but it's really if the buyer says, I'd like an attorney to review title with me.
Yes.
Can you do that?
Yeah, so I have my own law firm within land sales, so I can represent clients and help them as long as it doesn't conflict with land sale.
Okay.
I do that a lot.
yeah. Also, I believe the next page should be authorization to release information. So this is what we send down to the Attorney General's office. So we will send it to your client if they have a common name. Or we get those judgments back that say, so and so in the judgment, well, we need to clear it. So this is the authorization form that will be sent to your client to fill out, send back to us, and then we send it on to the Attorney General's office. I wish I could tell you there's an easy way to do this, but it's not. They need wet signatures. They cannot do electronic signatures. That just so you know what that looks like and what the information on it. One of the other documents I've included is the seller's disbursement of their proceeds. How they want to receive their proceeds. We do a lot of separate, I've been doing a lot of roundtables lately again. Separate closings where sellers will pre-sign and they fill out this form. We can do it by regular mail. We can next day it to them. They can pick the check up in the office. Wire is probably the biggest way that we send proceeds to sellers because those funds are available immediately when we wire out. So just make sure, I send an email out that thanking, if you send a contract over, thanking you for the order and a list of things that your escrow team may ask you for. And then at the bottom of it says seller, to bring a voided check to closing. So they bring a voided check, or if they have their account number, routing number, account number with them, they will write it in. I will never write it in. So they will write it in. And then we can wire their funds right after closing. So they have to sign off on it that we're going to do that. So, but that seems to be the most popular way of getting the seller their money when they sell the property. Something else I want to let you know, earnest money. We hold earnest money. We are doing it more and more and more. So it can either be hand delivered to our office, it can be mailed to our office. We also have an app for that. And I'll talk about it here in just a little bit. So it's sort of like Venmo, but it is specific to land sale title and very secure. That they can send the earnest money through that. They can also wire it. So we have wiring instructions and it can be wired to us as well. So it seems to take a little bit of pressure off of the agent who has to bring the check to closing. Because all lenders seem to be applying that earnest money to the monies that need to be brought to closing. So just keep that in mind. One of the other pieces of paper that I put in here are really all about the different kinds of liens and that are filed and how long they last and if they're renewable. So when we're doing title searches, this is what we're looking for. Some of them are renewable. When I first got into the business, that's all I did was call and find out about these judgments and liens and whether they were renewable. And as soon as they see that you're selling a property, they're going to renew it and collect it. So, but just some really good information, you know, the term renewable, the different statuses, Ohio Revised Code, and whether they're at state level, county level, things of that nature. So that is that. I believe you probably have one more piece of paper regarding good funds.
The next one.
No? Okay.
It's the number.
Yeah, here you go. Good funds law. Can I look at your-
Yeah.
It's me, I don't need- Thank you. Personal check up to $1,000. I guess we can take cash up to 100.
Yes.
Okay, so we can take cash up to 100. So I'll have to add that. Official check. Then personal check up to 1,000, official bank check up to 10,000. And all other funds for closings have to be wired. So just be aware of that. I sort of put reiterating that the seller has to sign a disbursement form. I went over that with you. Wiring instructions will be emailed to the buyer in an encrypted email, so they know where to wire funds for their purchase. Also, I just like to make you aware of emails, and I know Carol's really big on this as well. If you have a very common Gmail, Yahoo, any type of other free domain email, those emails can be easily hacked. And so we're very cautious of fraud on our end, in the title company's end. Just know that they can be easily hacked. So if you're, you guys have account.kw.com, you're fine. But if you're using a Gmail account or Yahoo account, make sure it's a strong email and password. That's all I can really do, because hackers are smart, very, very smart. And they know realtors, and they know title people, and they know lenders, and all the people that play a part in a lot of money being transferred back and forth. So just sort of be aware of that. So any questions about anything? And I don't want you to think it would be a question that, you know, sometimes we all don't know what we don't know until we do it. So
I have a couple questions. At what point in the process would, if you're representing a buyer or seller, would you contact the title company?
It would be as soon as the contract is executed is when it would come to us. But when you are getting it signed, you can also contact us, like if you want to know how it needs to be signed. But we start the process once we have an executed contract. If you are concerned about a property, you can also send it to us to do a prelim title. So if you go to a listing appointment, you can have that information.
Okay, and so follow that up. At whose discretion is the title company picked? Like, is it up to the buyer or is it up to you?
it's all negotiable
Okay.
in the contract. So if you're representing a buyer and you want land sale title, you can write it into the contract. It is customary in the state of Ohio and the counties contiguous to Franklin that the listing agent pick the seller pick the title company. but it's all negotiable.
Mhm.
And that's usually on the MLS, so you know going into what through the title.
We should put it in our agent to agent remarks,
Mhm.
who the title company is. In this market, unlike Cincinnati, for example, typically the sellers will choose the title company. And Faye, I'm glad you asked those questions, that I made notes
Yeah.
on that. Foreign ownership. I don't know if you covered that, I was in and out of here. If you go to a listing and they're foreign owners. The other, yeah. just like-
Perfect.
You'll have.
Or you have foreign buyers.
Mhm.
Some of the restrictions, things to look for in that regard regarding title. Red flags or something that information that you need in particular, if any.
I mean, if it's a foreign seller, FERPTA could apply, there's different things with that. I don't know it off the top of my head, I think it's, what's it, under 250 or?
I know there's a ceiling on it, but I know there's a lot of foreign investment, Canadians and Chinese and people that come and
Yeah,
invest in property here, and when they go to sell it. We want to make sure that we're complying with whatever we need to comply with, and I'm really not sure.
right, I mean, if I had the board contract in front of me, it is in there what FERPTA applies to.
Right.
I wanna say it's as long as, if this buyer is gonna use it as its principal residence, even if it's a foreign seller, FERPTA won't apply. If it's going to be an investment property, and I wanna say if it's over 250,000, the purchase price, FERPTA applies, which means that 15% of the proceeds are gonna be withheld, and we're gonna send those to the IRS. So there's a lot more involved in that if it's a foreign individual versus a foreign LLC, or if it's sole member LLC, it's different percentages get withheld from the proceeds.
I will tell you, and this has been many years ago. I had a realtor client who was Hispanic. He dealt a lot with the Hispanic buyers that only had cash, and so they would bring, it's like you can't take the cash at closing, and so they would bring money orders and stamp money orders in. And then the processor, we had forms to fill out for all the money orders that came in, and would have to file that then. Those papers to purchase that. So, I mean, we all think that real estate is just the same, on every transaction, but we've had so many different variables and incidences of the way people do business, and if we are ever in doubt, we just contact the underwriter and get direction from them, so.
I will just add, FERPTA only applies to a foreign seller. It doesn't apply to foreign buyers.
Right.
The other thing is, one of the things that concerns me, and I think I've talked to them in training, is to be very careful as to who has the right to sell a property.
Mhm.
And I think you touched on that earlier, but give you an example, elderly parents or infirm or mentally infirm and so on. The kids say, we're gonna sell mom and dad's house.
Mhm.
And then you have a contest going between siblings because some want to sell it, some don't want to sell it. And all of these different things have to gel around who actually has the right to list the house and put it on the market.
Right.
Clarify that a little better than I've just.
Well, it really depends, but like going back to a company that's gonna sell it, like she said, we won't take the Secretary of State documents, the articles of organization. We won't accept that because we actually have had a situation where the statutory agent, who is what you will see on the Secretary of State, wanted to sell the property, but they did not have the authority to sell the property. They weren't a member of the LLC. So you have to get those documents like the operating agreement to see who actually can sell the property. So that's the same with any kind of company. And then the trust you need, because sometimes the owner of a trust isn't actually the trustee of the trust, and the trustee is the only one that can sign. And then you want to make sure that in the trust, they actually have the authority to sell property. because they might not have that authority. When
They
it
can
comes,
call.
right, and then when it comes to the situation you're referring to, a lot of times it's in probate, and if there's a deceased individual and kids think, I just can sell this property, and it's like, no, it has to go through probate, there needs to be a named executor if there's a will, or a named administrator if there isn't a will, and then the court will decide based on the will who can sell the property.
I think my point is that as newer agents, and even agents have been in it for a while, we get a call or we know somebody says, hey, I want to list my property, I want to list something, and oh, we're excited, now we're gonna go out and get this listing. What is incumbent upon us? How much digging do we have to do and should be prepared for when we go out there to know that? I mean, we could get into the process and get this listing going and send you the paperwork, and then all of a sudden, like, oops, they don't even have the right to list this property.
Well, I think that is why you need to look at the auditor site,
Completely agree.
because that's gonna tell you who owns it. So if, if it's in a trust, it's gonna have TR next to it. And then if you have parents, that you see their names in the trust, but that's not who you're meeting with, and then they say, oh, my mom's deceased or so, I mean, that's when you have to start
A little bit of
asking
private
those
eye work,
questions.
Exactly.
Before, before you start. I'm
Yeah.
gonna address the dementia, only because my mom had Alzheimer's and, I had guardianship, so it was easy, to really get that cleared through the court and get that taken care of. I've had closings where I didn't close, the person signing, because I could tell she did not. And the one fellow said to me, her son, well, on a good day, he was a truck driver, so he had power of attorney, but he wasn't gonna be in town. And it's like, well, you can catch her on a good day. And it's like, I'm not gonna catch her on a good day. I'm not gonna do that. So, I questioned a couple, through the years that, I have chosen not to move forward. I had one that the woman came to closing and she had her family all around her. I mean, the sons came and everything. She was sobbing to sell this house because her husband had passed away, and do I think she was of sound mind? Yeah, I think she was an emotional wreck. And I put my pen down. I said, we're not gonna close this right now. I said, why don't you go have some lunch and see, how she's doing and come back. And she came back and she was fine. I mean, I didn't feel like she was under duress. That's if you're a notary and have some experience at the closing table and you see these people. I also have one at closing table where, and I don't mean to digress, but the closer is important to have at the closing table that they know what they're doing. I had a situation where a daughter, mom in the condo, and was like in her 80s and frail, and the daughter came in. Daughter was married, didn't bring her husband, and she goes, he's out in the car. I'll go get him here in a little bit. So the mom signed the deed. This gal signed, daughter signed the deed. And I said, she goes, I'll take the deed out. Oh, I left her go do it. And she came back in and I said, I'm gonna go out and say hello to your husband because I'll need a copy of his driver's license.
Not
No,
Yeah.
no. So I'm saying, we see it and, know your people and really, I mean, I don't know that we can all know our people about everything, but I've had that happen at the closing table, and there's some people, some closers that might just say, she did that. Now we got that on there. I'm not gonna do it. I won't do that. And I won't sign somebody that I feel I had somebody drunk at the closing table. I'm not gonna sign him.
Because it wouldn't be even legal at that point, would it?
Right.
Because he was not capable.
No. And so you see all sorts of things. So, if you have children, adult children that are trying to sell their parents' home find out where they stand in line to be able to do that. Sarah said it very well, and she,
Sometimes like a prelim search could help on that as well, because if they have something like a transfer on death designation affidavit where the owner, the mom has given the property to one child, we know that that one child is the person that has the authority to sell it.
yeah, I have you did my trust. Yeah, a transfer and death deed. So, yeah, I highly recommend preliminary title searches if you have listings. As soon as you are gonna go to that listing appointment, have it, you get it. The houses have only been on the market 10 minutes. And now we're getting back to a normal market. So, you know, you may be on the market for a week, or maybe as this goes on for a month. I hope not. I hope they still sell, you know, pretty quickly, but ask for that prelim. Just shoot the address over and we'll do prelim type work started on it.
So go to the auditor's site first, understand who you're dealing with, and know that they're Johnny on the spot as soon as you can get the info over to them.
Yeah.
And begin the process, because once you get into the process, it's very uncomfortable to get into a situation where potentially you have a buyer and now you've got to unwind all this stuff and it's not gonna go anywhere. It's
And
done.
if you can eloquently say this to people, you know what, I don't know the answer to this question right now, but I know somebody that does.
Yeah.
And you, and I always, I work with you, and when, if you have something after 9, it probably would be. But, weekends, if you're out and about and you've got questions about anything, I just don't want you to hesitate to call. So we work with you.
Okay, you're gonna do the,
Yeah, I'm gonna
Do
let
we have
this is-
time? I don't know.
oh, no, we absolutely have time,
Okay.
yes. We have you till 11:30.
Oh, okay.
So, yeah.
And then I'll talk about the website then.
And lunch is coming, and so we'll, yeah, we definitely want to.
Okay. Okay, so on this property, this was an investment property, so up front, you need to make sure you're getting a copy of the leases if there's a tenant. But I'll kind of go over this. So we have the sale price of the property. This deposit is for the earnest money. Oh, actually, this is the seller. Now, this is the earnest money credit to the buyer. Then we have the buyer's loan amount. Then this one had a seller credit in the contract. And then we prorate the taxes. So I wanted to go over taxes a little bit because it's, I think, the hardest thing for people to understand. Taxes are in arrears in Franklin County. So even if your seller has paid 2022 in full, they're still gonna give a credit to the buyer, a prorated credit for the time that they owned the property in 2022 that the buyer is gonna have to pay taxes on. So sellers always are like, I paid my taxes in full and you're still collecting this amount, and that's why it's in arrears. So then we prorate the rent for the month of August. Here, they're only getting a day since this closed on 8/30. And then we also, well, that's not right there. So then we have lender fees. We have the escrows for their taxes and insurance. Then we have land sales fees and the endorsements for the lender, the survey fee. And then over here, we have the title fees to the seller and the commission.
Do we have the seller on the left side, buyer on the right?
Yeah. And,
Write that in on your sheets, please, so that you'll remember at the top of the columns.
yeah, and then this owner's policy is what we were discussing with who chooses the title company, and that's in the contract that seller will pay this owner's policy. And so then we have the conveyance tax for the seller. That is also in the contract that the seller will pay the conveyance fee. And then we have the recording fees over here to the buyer. Then we have the payoff to the seller. So this one had one mortgage on it that we're paying off. Then we have the homeowner's insurance for the year charged to the buyer. Then we check water and sewer, because sewer can become a lien on the property if it's not paid. And then here we are transferring, the security deposits on the property from the seller to the buyer. And that's pretty much it. So then you'll come down to what is due from the borrowers, the 1493.62, that's their cash to close. And then you have due to the seller, the 91,276.44 is the seller's proceeds.
And we have two signature pages attached because they both signed at different times. And if there's the one settlement statement and the second settlement statement, they're the same. Just one signed at one time and the other signed at another. One of the things too, and not for it to sound confusing, the lender always has a CD that we have to prepare closing disclosure. And how they calculate title insurance for the buyer on the lender policy, it usually will reflect that full rate, but then there'll be a credit given to them on this buy side that reduces that number to $100. Because the seller is paying for an owner's title policy, your buyer will get a lender title policy for what's called simultaneous issue for $100. So sometimes you'll see this big number up for a lender policy and a credit then will be given back to wash that out to make it $100. Also, if you have a seller that's owned the property for less than 10 years, they get a title insurance premium reduction. It's called reissue rate based on the face amount of the policy. It's just sort of a perk. It's about a 30% savings on that owner's title policy as a seller. If they don't have that, or it's more than 10 years old, that title insurance, then the reissue, there's no reissue rate. But if they have that policy, their owner's policy, they'll get a what's called a reissue rate, less than 10 years.
So typically when they have a closing coming up within a week or a few days, they've gotten a clear to close from the lender. They need to review this and their seller buyer needs to review this, whatever. There's a lot of confusion on these and it's very hard for new agents, including seasoned agents, to really pour through this and understand everything. No problem with them contacting you and.
We'll walk through.
Exactly.
Yeah, we'll walk through it.
Yeah, because I think everybody needs to be clear that these are the figures and where they come from and how they're arrived at and so on. And I know.
Well, a couple of years ago, they, obviously, we've got the closing disclosures now. The government mandates these closing disclosures that itemize, or they bundle these fees all together. Settlement statement itemizes everything out. So, but they work hand in hand. Weird, but they do. The CDs have to match the settlement statement. So that's one thing that if you, the first time call, we'll go over everything with you. Yeah.
And you're gonna hear acronyms like CDs and, stuff, you're gonna go over with that. Don't be afraid to ask, what is this? What does this mean? We don't know it all and we go years and not know it all. So if you have something that's not clear to you and say, I don't know what this is, ask me, ask Debbie.
You might text me something with an
Yeah.
acronym and I will.
Yeah, I mean, we want it to be crystal clear. Don't want to get to where we've closed something or done something and go, I didn't know or should have known. We should have known. And so if it isn't clear, to make sure we ask the questions. There's no shame in that because we don't know it all. I don't know a lot about title. I sit in these and I ask questions because things change and I want to make sure they're always up to speed. But when you have good partners in this business, you can rely on them to bring you the most current information, of course, including their attorneys is a benefit.
And we didn't know when we started,
No,
you know,
Believe me,
we
we
didn't know anything when we started.
no,
We, you know, it's sort of learn through osmosis, you just do it.
gotta ask questions and be clear. I know this can be very, very confusing. And your buyers and sellers are gonna say, what does this mean? Because it's really on us to contact them and just say, did you get the settlement statement? Is everything clear to you? Do you need me to go through it? You know, does everything make sense and so on?
And two, we went over it and Sarah did a great job going back and forth between seller and buyer column. So if you're representing a buyer, you're gonna just focus on that. buyer
Right,
column.
exactly.
If you're representing the seller, you're gonna focus on that seller column and make sure that what you agreed to for your seller is being done, or what you agreed to for your buyer is being done. So you won't focus on the whole thing, you'll just sort of focus on your side, so.
Which brings me to the next, I'm sorry, Bonnie, go ahead.
No, I just have a question,
Yeah,
but
go ahead.
I'm sorry, I had to step out. I've been drinking coffee.
Yeah.
What is the closing protection letter fee with Title Resources Guarantee Company?
That's for the lender, so it's just their closing protection coverage on their funds. It's the same thing that we offer to the buyer and the seller at closing for the $55 or the, what is it, $20 for the buyer. So it's just,
It's fraud insurance to
Yeah.
protect the money, so the lender mandates it on the settlement
Mhm.
statement, so it protects the money the lender is funding us on this file against fraud or theft. From the title company, from things being, yeah, so covers that. The additional fraud insurance, we always offer it to the Department of Insurance mandates that too.
Okay.
Used to be back in the day, they just ordered you to have one closing protection coverage letter a year. Now we got to do it on every file, and the additional fraud insurance came when they mandated it on every file for the lender. They said, well, then we need it on people who are bringing money to the closing table as well. So that's that fraud insurance for the buyer and the seller, and whether or not they take it, it is going to be offered to them at the closing table, and that protects that money against theft or fraud against me, the title company, in case I take money, or a processor takes money, or the title company misappropriates funds or anything like that. It covers that money.
I was just kind of shocked when I heard it the first time, because I thought, by implication in your role, you should be protecting people against that. But it comes as an extra optional charge.
yeah, it
Yeah.
goes to our underwriters, so they're basically giving the extra insurance, because like, for an example. There was a seller that got a proceeds check and just never cashed it. It just sat around for a while. And that title company went out of business and went bankrupt.
Oh,
So they couldn't cash the check. If they would have purchased insurance, the underwriter would have to be able to provide that. So that's kind of,
And we did have a case in southern Delaware, which is the most talked about. I'm gonna say probably 12 or 15 years ago. Now, where a husband and wife team owned a mortgage company and a title company, and they did intermingle funds. It was in the newspaper, when newspaper was a thing. It
Right,
was in
right.
the newspaper. Yeah, and they're both in jail,
Yeah.
but yeah, they just misappropriated funds. They were paying Peter to pay Paul, in that case. So that's why this has come about. I will always go into, I've been a licensed title agent for 30 years, and I had no incidents of fraud. Land sales been around longer than that with no incidents of fraud. I just can't tell you whether or not you need it. It is totally, up to the buyer or seller.
And we
to
can't either.
purchase it.
no, I know.
Yeah.
And
But
People that go out of town, if we're sending packages and money back and forth and things, and they don't see us, then maybe, but
last point, not to seller. Sellers want to know what they're gonna walk away from the table with. We don't know until we get the final closing disclosure and the bottom line shows up, but we do have the ability to do a net to seller with their cooperation. Will you explain what that is?
yeah, actually, if you have your phone, you can pull up www.landsell.com. I'm gonna show you two. that we're gonna, look at, I'm gonna pull WW. I personally like this, but I'm a little more, old school. It's LANDSEL. And then our website comes up. And just tells you a little bit about our company and who we are, what we do. You can get a quote, you can register, get online and register, log in and do all of that. You can do that as well. It is a good way to calculate title insurance, you know, based on closing date and things of that nature. But what I really like is if you hit net to seller Ohio. And it comes up with a net sheet and you fill out your agent's name, email address, company and phone number, and then the property address, seller's name. And then it says county, so there's a drop down box there that you're gonna have to put the county in. Because conveyance fees are different in every county. And then it allows you to do a purchase price, can't talk. Purchase prices in there. A lot of times you don't know mortgage payoffs. But it will also let you put your commission in, so 3%, or 2 and 3, however that is. It will calculate the owner's title policy. You could put in the home warranty if I don't think we do gas line warranties anymore. Anything miscellaneous. If there is something that the seller is, I'm seeing on a couple of closings where they're paying the buyer $3,000 for closing costs. I've seen a couple of those sneak back in. So you can put that in there as a miscellaneous number. Your admin fee, if you have that. And then there's a custom fee. And it just depends on how your contract is negotiated and do that. Then you put your half taxes in, the date of closing, and then you calculate the tax proration, and then it calculates the seller net. What seller nets are always estimated because it ain't over till it's over. And so just know that these are always subject to change depending until we get to the closing table. But it's pretty spot on doing it this way. We also have an app called Lancel One. Let me pull that back open.
I just wanted to add as well that you can always email land sale, like I'll provide prelim settlement statements for my clients if they just give me the purchase price, commission, if they want me to add in a home warranty, if they have an estimated payoff, I can do all of that. So,
Yeah.
I would
In
prefer
your
that the title
spreadsheet.
company prepare and
yeah,
that the seller, would you be willing to do that?
Oh,
Yes. I don't even do them because there are too many variables.
Yeah.
And the bottom line is whenever you prepare one or have it prepared, is it in your dialogue, in your written conversation and on the document? This is an estimate only, this is not the final. And so you need to put, am I
I
right?
put
Sarah?
in big letters.
Yeah.
That it's an
Sample
estimated
only,
seller.
it's a sample, it's an estimate, whatever. So that they're very clear that this, if you tell them they're gonna get 400,000, they get 350, then they're ticked at you. Well, what happened?
Yeah.
Well, anything's possible. We got, something. That's why I don't do them. I'd rather have the title company prepare and then let the seller know this is an estimate. We're happy.
I've been
to provide
known
it.
to pull over the side of the street if you're. in a
Yeah.
hurry.
So, but I want them to know that those are available.
Yeah, definitely. Prelims, estimated seller net. I mean, really, guys, anything that you
Yeah.
need at any time, we're here. We work when you work. So yeah, if you need that, have any questions about it. We have an app, if you just want to make note of it. It's called a Land Sell Agent One. And then we also have an earnest money app, and I can actually sit down with you individually. We'll
Yeah.
go have lunch and we can sit and play with those apps and learn how to use them. But I like the one that is the 3 purchase price. It's fairly quick, fairly simple. And you know, if you want to sit at night, you know, and play with it a little bit, that's fine too. But we're here to help you. So whatever you need.
Great job today. They're outstanding
Yes,
what they
thank
do, and I highly recommend that you.
Yeah,
Have
she's
a-
on the circuit.
Yeah.
Bonnie
Bonnie
is
is
there.
there.
She- You've signed in, we have your email addresses, so too, we do a lot of continuing education, so this class will be a 1-hour. Continuing education class for you, so I will email you the certificates for that, and then I'll upload your stuff to the Division of Real Estate, and so you have that credit.
And they graciously provided lunch for you, so you can go grab your lunch whenever you want.
Wow.
We'll just sit and hang out a little bit, and I don't know
Yeah.
what your time is like.
Oh, no, I'm fine, if you guys have any questions,
Have
you know,
lunch and
you won't know you have a question until you get a question. And,
I know you do.
so, like I said, we're always available, to do that. So,
I wish we had more people here. What you talked about today
you know
was
what,
invaluable.
Yeah.
honestly.
you know what,
Phenomenal.
by the end, you know, at the end of the day, you guys are lovely, and I'm glad we were here to answer your questions, and, you know, even when you get that contract, a lot of people send it over in .loop, you know, just scan it in and put in the email what else you need. You know, if you don't know, then I'll let you know what else you need. I'll email you back and send it. That way it's in, you know, .loop, it's secure, and we'll go from there. Residential property disclosures, and I mean, there's a few things that have to come along with the contract, but yeah.
Are you getting most of your information through .loop versus DocuSign?
Let's say.
I mean, .loop is probably the
Yeah.
most popular,
Uh-huh.
and I like .loop, yeah. But it depends how you even send it up. Sometimes I'll get stuff sent
Mhm.
over that I have to sign in, and I don't sign in the .loop. So I don't sign in the .loop. And in most all agents send .loop over, so you don't have to sign into it, but it keeps it. And I would ask, I don't know what you think about this, but I'll get some agents that will send 6 .loops with separate documents in it. Put them together, just send me 1 .loop. And that way then I can forward it to the right people in the title department, the order department, and we can get it. So in that, or I'm just sending 6 emails over in .loop with 1 document in each. So, and I'm sure that's just user,
Oh, yeah.
the way they may have been taught or trying to figure it out, but
When I started out with DocuSign, so now I have to go back.
yeah.
So everyone keeps saying .loop, so now I feel like I need to go and figure out how to. use
Yeah,
it.
I mean, we
think
can
it's more
DocuSign as
straightforward,
well.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's easier to manipulate, frankly.
Yeah, and you can add us to it, you know, and it's nice to be.
Yeah, and you should add them in your contacts, so that as you go, they're in there. Debbie's information is in there and you've got it. So, have some lunch,
So,
guys.
Our cards are in the back as well.
Yeah.
Sarah is great legal counsel, and enjoy it. But I wait to call her all the time. I think I know the answer to this. Yeah, that's fine.
And my buyers, I had a foreign buyer, and they really wanted to have an attorney involved, and so what it unfortunately wasn't you, because the seller had chosen a different
Yeah.
attorney. But that gave them such peace of mind to have someone there
Yeah.
explaining things, and you know, some of it I knew enough to tell them, but why should I do that? I'm not the expert.
Right,
So,
Right.
you know, to bring someone in like that, and they just felt so much
Yeah.
better about it.
We used to
Yeah.
have we used to have attorneys at closing tables a lot.
Mhm.
Yeah.
I'm gonna say probably the last 15, 20 years,
Yeah.
not as
Not
much.
as
I try and do the commercial ones just because they're
Yeah.
more
Right.
complicated, but.
Yeah, yeah. So
Well, that's-
I'm primarily residential,
Right.
do some commercial, but not a lot, but primarily residential.
I was in commercial for 35 years, so,
So,
but, you know, again, I passed everything off to the attorney and the title company to
Yeah.
handle. Never,
Well, when closing, it was like, okay,
Yeah.
Yeah.
But they would always, they look at, so, what's the answer to that question? Okay. So, but yeah, it's always fun. And some of you, do you go to Honduras?
Oh, yeah.
And no, we
I did it online.
good, good. So who was the attorney who taught your class?
Oh, I did on.
You did online too. Well, so much they've been online now, so they're probably not teaching like.
Well, it
these.
would have been Bill Thompson or it would have been.
Larry Press.
Larry
and-
Press.
Yeah.
Was Larry Press teacher?
It wasn't either of them.
It wasn't either of them?
Uh-uh. Who did mine?
How long have you been agent?
I got my license in December.
Oh, okay.
They sat for us for a while.
Yeah, for almost a year.
Good. Good. How do you like it?
Everything's still pretty new, but I'm getting through it.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, if you're interested in marketing, I'll send an email out thanking you guys and I'll have Mindy's contact information if you wanna do any marketing and things like that. Yeah, the only thing that I can tell you is, have sort of you talked about a business plan, and have an idea of marketing. And, we do a lot of marketing at no cost. Not all of it, but we're RESPA compliant when it comes to just sold or just listed cards when somebody else is printing it. But we do a lot of in-house printing where we don't charge for those items. So Mindy's really good at helping you and coaching you with your marketing. So she'll put a plan together, a consistent plan. And sort of have an idea, financially, how much do you want to spend on marketing, and be realistic about it, because I think that's what shuts newer agents down, is they have this big plan and they don't do any of it, because it gets too costly. So, bring it in and handle what you can but consistently get your name out to that same sphere of people. That's the best advice that I can give you. Obviously you have your sphere of people, but
Yeah.
sometimes you just need a new group of people to add to that, a new subdivision or but keeping it's like at 250 pieces that you can continually do that. If you have a lender that you've made a relationship with, they can co-market, and even we co-market with you. And we pay about 25% of that cost of card, and then a lender can pay as well. So that cuts almost 50% of that cost down on that card. And it's minimal. And I just let you know it's minimal. So maybe you do it once a month, maybe you do it every 3 months, maybe you do it you know what your limits are. So or you don't have any limits at all. I don't know. It just, the free marketing we have is walking subdivisions with door knockers and knocking on doors and hanging things on doors and that are tastefully done. And, just putting that work in, and maybe taking, I don't know if you have a dog, walk your dog in the neighborhood, farm, or I don't know, but people like that. What is your niche? Think about your niche. What are you gonna, who do you want to target?
Also, a
if
great
we have-
time to think about a campaign, because you can also tie that in a door hanger, maybe with the dollar store. And pick up something really cute for $1 a piece, and then do $50 or so, whatever you can afford, whatever your budget is or isn't. But maybe tie that into the door hanger with some cute little pumpkin spice or a little pumpkin or something that, especially if you live in the neighborhood. I think if you do farm your own neighborhood, it really means because you can walk the dog, visit with folks.
They just
Saturday.
want to see you and connect
exactly.
and have a relationship with you. That's all. Farmers market, they have a beautiful
Perfect,
in
absolutely.
Worthington. Show up with your Keller Williams shirt on
Festivals.
and go walk the farmers market and pass out cards.
Yeah.
Hi, I'm your neighborhood. I don't know. Do you remember the Cluet?
Yes. Yes,
Yes, he'd say, gonna hand out 1,000 cards a year,
yes.
1,000 cards.
Went to his funeral, as a matter of fact.
Yeah,
It's a wonderful man.
so he was amazing. Yeah, he had this big voice. He
He was also
handing out
preaching.
your cards, handing out your cards. But yeah, you gotta wear your brand.
Yeah. I preach that too. They-
Where's your brand?
I
Who are you? What do you
normally
do?
will wear my name tag.
Who are you? and What do you
Come
do?
to anything.
I don't see you with brand on.
Yeah,
Where's your brand?
but it's important because that's the only way you stand up from the masses, all of us, really.
It was interesting. I door knocked on Saturday because I was passing out invitations to my Kona Ice Day next week. Someone's farming my neighborhood. I know that we've received 4 mailers from her. So I was talking to one of the families who actually invited me in for lemonade because I was drenched. I was sweating so much. It was miserable out.
Yeah.
And I said something about, I know they said, why am I doing this?
Yeah.
And I said, well, I know you've been getting stuff from other realtors. And they said, we have. They don't even remember
Yeah.
seeing it.
Yeah.
I guarantee they're gonna remember the Kona Ice truck coming into town. So
It
that's
is
the one
all not
thing.
about the one time. It's
Yeah,
all
yeah.
about the consistency.
Exactly.
It's
Over
all
time.
about the
Yeah.
consistency.
It's got to be.
They may throw it away.
Yeah.
If they have an Ohio State schedule, they'll put it in the refrigerator, I promise you
Yeah.
that. Or a good recipe to pumpkin bread or something coming up with the fall, they'll keep in there, they'll keep it. I mean, I have things on the side of my refrigerator that I, keep, that I,
And there's a point, a recipe a month, you could send.
that's what you're known for. I
Yeah.
mean, you get known for, you have to get known for something. So there's just.
And there has to be a value added then. It can't just be another mailer from another realtor and, they're gonna go. So, but recipes are a really good way to.
Yeah.
Stay.
And I will tell you with the marketing, Minnie knows all the RESPA compliance, so with the logos and the verbiage that needs to be down at the bottom of the card, so she'll keep you compliant when it comes to that type of marketing as well, so. Good at what she does, she has her degree in graphic design, so she does a nice job. Hyperactive a little bit sometimes, but she does a nice job. To keep you on your toes.
What's her contact info?
I'll email it. Yeah, I'll get back this afternoon. I'll email you all of
Okay, great.
Yeah.
Thank
Thank
you guys
you.
so much.
Anytime you guys have questions, don't hesitate. Cards are up here. I think my phone number may be on some of those packets I gave out.
Are you headed back to the office?
Yeah,
Do you wanna, are you gonna hang out, or do you wanna take some of the food back to the office, whatever you wanna do?
Yeah, I mean, here, somebody will eat it.
Well, they will.
Yeah,
But I think you're going back, you might wanna.
I gotta, I have to go home. My garage roof is leaking. And the skin on my ceiling on my garage is coming down on my car. What?
Oh, no. When did this happen?
It's been happening that they fixed it, so it's been on for a while, and I walk out with my, the skin is on grace. I named my car, so.
You just got a new car.
So I'm gonna be. Thank you. Thank you. But I'll eat lunch. Yeah, I'll send the deal. Okay. You want me to, you want to do that right now? I'm gonna do one too. Okay. Yeah, we'll just sit and then. Please. Now, she's doing a little event, so we're helping her do some events with signs and things, so there's an event you wanna do. Talk to us about it. Yes, I know.
She's getting some swag to. I have my sign order.
Okay, good.
For my sponsorship and I passed out cards Saturday and showed how the sponsors on there and contact info on the cards.
We do a lot of buyer seller seminars too, with like a lot of advertising sport. But with the market change since 2016, yes, we're now how silly and dumb it is. We have nobody, right? They're actually maybe my process having that. They don't know the interest rates going up. So creative, what if you just have to be a little creative and find out if we can help you with whatever you think about. So stuff.
Yeah.
Looks like, you know. I don't mean it's only one. It's not John. Or.
This looks like Jersey. Like him. That's very, yeah. Yeah. That looks like. Yeah, over there. And I think we're next to both. Did you get good out of this? In terms of sound on that? Okay. Say, how about you? Did you feel good about it?
Yeah, I learned a lot.
Yeah. She's really, really a wonderful, client, contact to have. Debbie's been in the business, she's well known, well liked, been around a long time. So she could really be very helpful to you. Did I understand you think you might have a listing coming? Or get something going on?
No,
Okay,
I mean, hopefully,
yeah, well,
I have a couple of people who want to buy,
okay,
but no listings.
okay, well. Anything I can do to help you get something in the works would be wonderful. I'd be glad to help you.
I will definitely, if something comes up, I will be texting you or emailing you. Too much.
No, no too much. I'm happy to do it. That's what I can do for you. Just wrapping all stuff in the sandwich.
Okay, all meat ready.
I don't know. They might be, chocolate chip and they will go up. Did you find any chocolate chip over there?
The wedding's over, so now I can eat again.
Yeah.
Come on, Rita. Look inside you guys.
Yeah.
Would anybody like a soda? I'm going out to the machine.
I'm good.
No, thank you.
I'll take a diet.
Okay.
Something diet.
I think they have a Diet Pepsi and a Coke Zero. Diet Pepsi. You need help? No? No, do you want anything?
No, thanks. I'm gonna go grab my water. Anybody want water?
Hmm? But you guys taking fires out? To look, no. Look at you.
Still learning.
So, I know. So what do you think about like marketing? How are you gonna get?
I would like to farm my neighborhood that I just recently moved to. It's in Westerville. I don't know I don't have an exact plan for it yet. I do know a lot of people in my neighborhood like classic cars, like muscle cars, stuff like that. So I might try to do something related to that. Like I have a muscle car. I know a lot of my neighbors.
What do you have?
I have a Mustang. A lot of my neighbors have Mustangs and
I love it.
Challengers and stuff. And I know,
Thank you.
thank you. A lot of the kids in the neighborhood like love the cars and stuff, so. I might try to do something where like a car event, you know.
You do muscle to buy and sell,
Mhm.
like, got a,
Yeah, I have to.
in the picture of your car and muscles and brains, or muscles and brawn, or, I don't know.
Car show. I said car show.
Yeah, but a lot of my friends are in the car community and they have like cool cars that I know.
Is it recording?
It says recording up there.
Sure.
Be careful, it'll take a minute because it slams down when it comes out of the machine.
Thank you.
I opened one the other day and
I didn't have good.
Mhm.
You should wear a shirt. Halloween shirt. With like a muscle car.